I don't have any horse in the game one way or the other. I just look at the data.
There are those that say, you can test too much. You do know that.
Who says that?
Oh, just read the manuals, read the books.
Manuals?
Read the
What
books.
manuals?
Read the books.
What books?
What testing does
sorry,
it shows, wait a minute,
who
John,
said-
let me explain. What testing does, it shows cases. It shows where there may be cases.
I've covered you for a long time. I've gone to your rallies. I've talked to your people. They love you. They listen to you. They listen to every word you say. They hang on your every word. They don't listen to me or the media or Fauci. They think we're fake news. They want to get their advice from you. And so when they hear you say everything's under control, don't worry about wearing masks, I mean, these are people, many of them are older people,
What's
Mr.
your
President.
definition of control? Yeah, under the
It's giving them a false sense of
right
security.
now, I think it's under control. I'll tell you what.
How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is. But that doesn't mean we aren't doing everything we can. When I took over, we didn't even have a test. Now, in all fairness,
why would you have a test?
There was no test.
The virus
for
didn't
this.
exist. How would you have a
Excuse me, I was
test?
going to say.
Okay. Death is going up now.
Okay,
and it's 1,000 a day.
If you look at death.
Yeah, it's
okay,
going
let's
up
look.
again.
Let's look.
Daily death.
Take a look at some of these charts.
I'd love to.
We're going to look.
Let's look.
And if you look at death,
Yeah. It's started to go up
here's
again.
one. Well, right here, the United States is lowest in numerous categories. We're lower than the world.
Lower than
We're
the
lower
world?
than
What is that?
Europe.
In what?
Look.
In what?
Take a look. Right here. Here's case death.
Oh, you're doing death as a proportion of cases. I'm talking about death as a proportion of population. That's where the US is really bad.
Well,
Much worse than South Korea, Germany, etc.
you can't do that. You have
Why
to go.
can't I do that?
You have to go by. You have to go by where. Look, here is the United States. You have to go by the cases. The cases.
Why
of
not
death.
as a proportion of
when we have
population?
somebody. What it says is when you have somebody that
Yeah.
has where there's a case.
Oh, okay.
The people that live
Sure.
from
Oh.
those cases.
It's surely a relevant statistic to say if the US has X population and X percentage of death of that population
No,
versus
because you
South
have to
Korea.
go by the cases.
Well, look at South Korea,
If-
for example. 51 million population, 300 deaths. It's like, it's
You-
crazy
you don't
compared to
know
other-
that.
I do. It's on
You
the.
don't know
it's-
that.
You think they're faking their statistics? South Korea?
I
An
won't get
advanced
into
country?
that because I have a very good relationship
Yeah.
with the country. But you don't know that.
1,000 Americans are dying a day. But I understand on cases, it's different.
No, but you're not reporting it correctly, Jonathan.
I think I am, but it's been widely reported that the US has intelligence indicating that Russia paid bounties or offered to pay bounties to Taliban fighters to kill American soldiers. You had a phone call with Vladimir Putin on July 23rd. Did you bring up this issue?
No, that was a phone call to discuss other things.
And you've never discussed it with him?
I have never discussed it with him. No. I would. I'd have no problem with it.
But you don't believe the
it
intelligence?
never
It's because you
got
don't
to me.
believe the intelligence, that's why.
It never reached my desk. You know why? Because they didn't think it was intelligence. They didn't think it was real.
It was in
They
your
didn't
written
think-
brief, though,
They
apparently.
didn't think it was worthy of. I wouldn't mind if it reached my desk. I would have done something about it. It never reached my desk because
Do you read your written brief?
I do. I
Do you?
read a lot.
Really?
You know, I read a lot. They like to say I don't read. I read a lot.
Your daily
I
intelligence
comprehend
brief?
extraordinarily well, probably better than anybody that you've interviewed in a long time. I did more for the black community than anybody with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln, whether you like it or not. People say, oh, that's
You really
interesting."
you believe you did more than Lyndon Johnson, who passed the Civil
I
Rights
think I
Act?
did, yeah.
How?
Because I
How
got criminal
possibly did you
justice reform done. I got prison reform.
Lyndon Johnson.
I've done things. Well,
He passed the Civil Rights
ask,
Act.
How has it worked out? If you take a look at what Lyndon Johnson did.
You think the Civil Rights Act was a
How has it worked
mistake?
out? Because frankly, it took a long time. But for African Americans,
But you think that was a
under my
mistake?
administration, Jonathan, under my administration, African Americans were doing better than they had ever done in the history of this country.
How do you think history will remember John Lewis?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know John Lewis. He chose not to come to my inauguration. He chose. I never met John Lewis. Actually, I don't believe.
Do you find him impressive?
Can we see your badges, sir?
Sir, you
Sorry?
can't come here. You can't be here.
Can I ask who you are?
Can I ask who you are, sir?
Soy abogado aquí para ayudar. Si necesitas ayuda, dígame tu nombre. Dígame tu nombre si necesitas ayuda.
If you're smart, you're gonna get
If
out.
you're detained, give me your name.
Get out if you're smart. Get out.
Who are you? Who are you?
Don't worry
Who
about
are
who we
you?
are.
Are you police?
Don't
Are
worry
you
about who
police?
we are. You need to be able to get out. Get out. Get out. Get out now.
Are you police?
Don't worry about who we are.
Are you police?
Get out.
You have no business.
I have a room
You
here.
don't. No,
I
not on
have
the fourth
a
floor,
room
bro.
here.
There's
Not
third
on
and
this
second
floor.
floor. You don't have nothing.
That's
up here.
guaranteed. Get out on this floor. Get out.
Who are you?
Don't f***ing worry about who the f*** I am, bro.
Why are you doing this?
We have to resort to measures like this, to standing outside in the middle of a pandemic, holding our line, holding these posters, hoping to get in touch with people who are inside to try to help them exercise their legal and human rights. People inside are trying to communicate with us. They're doing their best, they're waving.
What the expulsions policy is doing right now is that no one is being afforded due process. We have children and other asylum seekers in here with no paper trail. This is literally a black box of information. If we cannot get their information, they will be expelled from this country back into violence. Everyone is supposed to have some type of legal assistance to go through asylum, especially children, but we know that children are also facing immediate expulsion. So we're here and we're going to try to help as much as possible.
I don't have any horse in the game one way or the other. I just look at the data.
Dr. Fauci, one of the things you made a comment a while ago with regards to hydroxychloroquine, and I have an article here that quotes the Henry Ford Health System, an extensive study on hydroxychloroquine, and they say that it significantly reduces the death rate of COVID patients. The study was highly analyzed by peer-reviewed, unlike many other studies. And quoting the executive officer said, as doctors and scientists, we look at the data for insight, and the data here is clear. There was a benefit to using the drug as a treatment for sick and hospitalized patients. And in talking with a lot of older doctors who have been around a while, and I trust their judgment and their use of hydroxychloroquine, they say that the initial studies didn't really use zinc with it, and they say that zinc is an enabler to be able to help hydroxychloroquine actually do its job of going after and reducing deaths in patients. Had a long conversation with a doctor earlier in the week, and he said, yes, as long as zinc is there, it really definitely does work. Without it, it's minimally effective. Would you like to comment on that?
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. The Henry Ford Hospital study that was published was a non-controlled retrospective cohort study that was confounded by a number of issues, including the fact that many of the people who were receiving hydroxychloroquine were also receiving corticosteroids, which we know from another study gives a clear benefit in reducing deaths with advanced disease. So that study is a flawed study, and I think anyone who examines it carefully is that it is not a randomized placebo-controlled trial.
It said it was peer-reviewed.
It doesn't matter. You can peer review something that's a bad study, but the fact is it is not a randomized placebo-controlled trial. The point that I think is important, because we all want to keep an open mind, any and all of the randomized placebo-controlled trials, which is the gold standard of determining if something is effective, none of them had shown any efficacy for hydroxychloroquine. Having said that, I will state, when I do see a randomized placebo-controlled trial that looks at any aspect of hydroxychloroquine, either early study, middle study, or late, if that randomized placebo-controlled trial shows efficacy, I would be the first one to admit it and to promote it. But I have not seen yet a randomized placebo-controlled trial that's done that, and in fact, every randomized placebo-controlled trial that has looked at it has shown no efficacy. So I just have to go with the data. I don't have any horse in the game one way or the other. I just look at the data.
Thank you very much.
The gentleman's time has expired.
They're using all kinds of DNA, even alien DNA, to treat people. So these spirits are harassing and sleeping with people.
That you said was a great doctor. In that video that you retweeted last night said that masks don't work and there is a cure for COVID-19, both of which health experts say is not true. She's also made videos saying that doctors make medicine using DNA from aliens and that they're trying to create a vaccine to make you immune from becoming religious.
Well, maybe it's the same, maybe it's not, but I can tell you this. She was on air along with many other doctors. They were big fans of hydroxychloroquine. And I thought she was very impressive in the sense that from where she came, I don't know which country she comes from, but she said that she's had tremendous success with hundreds of different patients. And I thought her voice was an important voice, but I know nothing about her.
But I happen to be a believer in hydroxy. I used it. I had no problem. I happen to be a believer. Many, many people agree with me.
Chips that they're going to be chipping on people, and in fact I watched a program today about something that they're going to be putting on people to make sure that they don't get religious, that they found
gene in somebody's mind that make you religious so they can vaccinate against it. But every child needs to be whipped. These days, they've taken corporal punishment. If you beat your children, they can call the cops and cause all kinds of chaos. The next thing, they'll be taken by social service and all kinds of craziness. Parents right now are afraid to discipline their children. I wasn't. I told my children, if I whoop you, call the cops. If they come, you go with them and don't come back. Most of our children that grew up watching Disney are witches. They watch, the Witches of Waverly Place. They watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch. They watch Raven the Psychic. They watch Hannah Montana, who had an alter ego. They have just all kinds of things. And then they now have the Twilight, Harry Potter. So all these children, all this witchcraft is coming into the soul of our children. There are people ruling this nation that are not even human. I'm telling you. Remember one day on the prayer line, I dealt with this reptilian spirit. Reptilian is half human, half whatever, half ET. They are responsible for serious gynecological problems. We call them all kinds of names. Endometriosis, we call them molar pregnancies, we call them fibroids, we call them cysts. But most of them are evil deposits from the spirit husband. They are responsible for miscarriages, impotence, men that can't get it up. And their agenda is still to sleep with women and men. They turn into a woman, then they sleep with a man and collect his sperm. Then they turn into a man and then they sleep with another woman and deposit the sperm and reproduce more of themselves.
The MDs at Twitter and Facebook have deemed those comments heretical, dangerous. Twitter said the video violates its policies on spreading misleading and potentially harmful information related to COVID-19, misinformation.
Twitter actually locked out Donald Trump Jr. after his account where he reposted a story touting the benefits of hydroxychloroquine. I think people should decide themselves they want to believe things or not and hear all sides.
Science is constantly evolving as we test and retest our assumptions against observed reality. That's the whole point of science. Unfortunately, reality is not the point of politics. Winning is the point of politics, so they scrubbed that video.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
I'm just asking, is there a world where the Constitution says you can favor one First Amendment liberty, protesting, over another, practicing your faith?
I'm not favoring anybody over anybody. I'm just making a statement that's a broad statement.
Dr. Fauci, do protests increase the spread of the virus?
Do protests increase the spread of the virus? I think I can make a general statement.
Well, 500,000 protesters on June 6th alone.
Yeah.
I'm just asking, that number of people, does
Yeah.
it increase the spread of the virus?
Crowding together, particularly when you're not wearing a mask, contributes to the spread of the virus.
Should we limit the protesting?
I'm not sure what you mean. How do we say limit the protesting?
Should government limit the protesting?
I don't think that's relevant to.
Well, you just said if it increases the spread of the virus. I'm just asking, should we limit it?
Well, I'm not in a position to determine what the government can do in a forceful way.
Well, you make all kinds of recommendations. You made comments on dating, on baseball, on everything you can imagine. I'm just asking you, just said that protests increase the spread. I'm just asking you, should we try to limit the protests?
No, I think I would leave that to people who have more of a position to do that. I can tell you.
Government stopping people from going to church, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
Last week in the Calvary Chapel case, 5 liberals on the Supreme Court said it was okay for Nevada to limit church services. Justice Gorsuch said it best. He said there's no world in which the Constitution permits Nevada to favor Caesar's Palace over Calvary Chapel. I'm just asking, is there a world where the Constitution says you can favor one First Amendment liberty, protesting, over another, practicing your faith?
I'm not favoring anybody over anybody. I'm just making a statement that's a broad statement that avoid crowds of any type, no matter where you are, because that leads to the acquisition and transmission. And I don't judge one crowd versus another crowd. When you're in a crowd, particularly if you're not wearing a mask, that induces the spread.
It's a simple question, doctor. Should we limit the protests? Government is obviously limiting people going to church. And look, there's been no violence that I can see at church. I haven't seen people during a church service go out and harm police officers or burn buildings. But we know that, I mean, for 63 days, 9 weeks, it's been happening in Portland.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one night in Chicago, 49 officers were injured. But no limit to protests, but boy, you can't go to church on Sunday.
I don't know how many times I can answer that. I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm just going to tell you.
You've opined on a lot of things, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, but I've never said
This is something that
limit
directly impacts the spread of the virus, and I'm asking your position on the protest.
Yeah, I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm telling you what it is, the danger. And you can make your own conclusion about that. You should stay away from crowds, no matter where the crowds are.
Government has stopped people from going to work. In fact, just in New Jersey 4 days ago, Ian Smith, Frank Trombetta were arrested for trying to operate their business, their gym. They were arrested. But my bet is if these two individuals who own this gym were outside just in front of their gym, and all the people who were working out in their gym were outside protesting, they'd been just fine. But because they were in the gym working out, actually running their business, they got arrested. You think that's okay?
You know, I'm not going to opine on who gets arrested and who does not. I mean, you get where I'm going. I'm telling you, as a public health official, I say crowds.
Do you see the inconsistency, though, Dr. Fauci?
There's no inconsistency, Congressman.
So you're allowed to protest millions of people on one day in crowds yelling, screaming, but you try to run your business, you get arrested? And if you stood right outside of that same business and protested, you wouldn't get arrested? You don't see an inconsistency there?
I don't understand what you're asking me as a public health official to opine on who should get arrested or not. That's not my position. You could ask it as much as you
you've
want,
advocated for
and I'm
certain
not gonna
businesses.
answer it.
You've advocated for certain businesses to be shut down. I'm just asking you on your position on the protest. I haven't seen one. We've heard a lot about hair salons. I haven't seen one hairstylist who, between haircuts, goes out and attacks police or sets something on fire. But we've seen all kinds of that stuff during protests, and we know the protest actually increased the spread of the virus. You've said that.
I said crowds. I didn't say specifically. I didn't say protests do anything.
So the protests don't increase the spread of the virus?
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, I just want an answer to the question. Do the protests increase the spread of the virus?
I don't have any scientific evidence that anything. I can tell you that crowds are known, particularly when you don't have a mask, to increase the acquisition and transmission. No matter what the crowd is.
So you don't have a position on whether the protests increase the spread of the virus or don't increase the spread of the virus?
I'm saying that crowds, wherever the crowds are, can give you an increased probability that there's going to be acquisition and transmission.
But do you understand Americans' concern? Protesting, particularly according to the Democrats, is just fine, but you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't go to church. There's limits placed on all three of those fundamental activities, First Amendment activities, but protesting is just fine.
You know, the gentleman's time has expired, but I'll just ask the gentleman to just think about his question and put it in reference to crowds that gather at political meetings, at fundraisers without masks, on an oil rig in Texas, nobody wearing a mask, nobody social distancing, but a fundraiser.
Right.
Would that be problematic? With that, I'll yield 5 minutes to Mr. Foster.